have Jeanette with us today. She's been one of our recurring members at Motherhood in the Raw, and she's seen kind of a lot, almost all of what we do. She's a mom of one who just recently turned one, and um, she related to us a lot in the way that she, kind of journeyed through postpartum. And so we found her story very interesting. She works for Capital One. Here's Jeanette, and she's going to tell us her story from postpartum.
Cool. Well, thank you. I have a little son. He's going to be 14 months at the end of this month. His name is Kieran. So we're in the toddler years. When I had Kieran, before I was pregnant, I suffered from anxiety and depression. So those were telltale signs that there may be a worse postpartum. So as I was nearing close to giving birth, I sought to get a therapist to kind of head it off at the past. And it's a good thing I did because motherhood was rough. It was all new things. It was beautiful too, having birthed him and, that miracle of life, it's wonderful, but then you do have those emotions that come behind it. Tired, you're stressed, you're worried that, are you doing things right? You're constantly going, am I doing things right? I'm doing it, or maybe I'm doing it wrong, or things aren't going the way you think they should go. They're not that perfect picture that everybody paints. And I don't think many people talk about the hardships of postpartum. So, especially when my husband went back to work, it was just me and my son. And I remember one day he woke up and he was crying and crying and crying and crying. And I fed him and I changed him, still crying and just crying and crying. I couldn't get him to stop. And I broke down. So here I was holding this baby. He's crying. I'm just like screaming. I don't know what you want me to do. What do you need? Because it just wasn't, he really needed anything. He just emotions and, but I thought I was doing something wrong. And so it was just very hard. And then, all the hormone changes that go along with it. So I kept doing my therapy. She reassured me that I was doing things right. My pediatrician reassured me I was doing things right, but you still have those doubts that if you're doing things right. And I still do have those doubts. Now we're going through toddler and I'm just like, some days I kind of be like, can I shut off from being a mom? But yeah.
How do you feel like the toddler versus infant doubts kind of compare, or the feelings that you had when he was an infant versus now getting into the toddler years? Like, are they similar? Are they, vastly different? How do you think they compare?
I think some things are similar and I think some things are different. Like, I still worry, like, are we feeding him enough? Are we giving him enough sleep? Is he on the right schedule? But now some of the new things are, how do we deal with temper tantrums? Are we handling temper tantrums correctly? Are we giving him the tools to work through that? And are we not, doing something that could affect him in a negative way? Like when I was growing up, my mom would whip me and we're trying the work through the tantrums instead of the whipping, which the pediatrician and therapists all come together and saying that that's not a good thing, is to whip, is to work through those tantrums. So now we have to kind of go, are we doing right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one because I think every mom kind of doubts themselves in that realm of temper tantrums and anger and sadness from a child, because we all grew up differently and that generation had a very different way of handling it than we do now. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times I've always found that, like, I don't know what to do because it is so different. I didn't have a lot of that education of how to handle those growing up. So you're kind of left on your own to figure that out in a way.
Yeah. Too, is no books, no rule book for kids, and they're all different.
Right. So continue what you were saying. Now that he is a toddler, how has your mental state been? How has your anxiety, either shown up or lessened, or how is that for you right now?
Yeah. Well, of course, with everything that's going on with the pandemic, it's a little tough because we don't get those breaks as much as we used to. Because my mom would take him for a weekend, and we would get those breaks. So now weekends are fully involved. Now it comes to the task of keeping him entertained. So he's no longer this little lava that we like to call him, our little glow bug. Um, he's this independent little bipedaling child now who's into everything. So it comes down to you want to keep them safe, but you want to keep them entertained, but then you want to make time for yourself. So it just becomes trying to make time for yourself, because you have to still understand that yes, you're a mother, but you still are you. And so my anxieties come with trying to balance that, because I feel guilty for taking time for myself, and I do need that time to myself. So it's kind of the logical parts going, you do need that time, and the illogical parts going, no, you need to spend all of it with your child.
Yeah, I think a lot of moms have that battle in their head of, I know I have it really, throughout the entire journey of motherhood with both my kids. Like, I should take time for myself. And when I do, I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm away from my kids and it's hard. And yeah, finding those breaks, like you were saying, is hard to do, but so necessary. So what kind of popped up for you when he was an infant, where you kind of felt like, I don't know if you did feel like it was different, but how it felt different from depression and anxiety before giving birth and then afterwards? Like, was there a shift in that? Was it kind of just building up from that?
I think some things played on some of my depression and anxiety. What we found out that I have negative thoughts that come behind my depression. And so when things happen, I assume they go into a category of, like, one is I'm not good enough. So sometimes when things weren't going with Kieran, or he was crying, or we couldn't console him, or, things would happen, hospital, like health wise for him, that just things that happen, I would put it in the category if I wasn't a good enough mother, and I wasn't good enough. So that went into that category of I wasn't good enough. So it was like it just the same buckets, but they just gave new labels.
Yeah. Yeah. I relate a lot to your story, just thinking back to that first year that I had with my kids. Um, and is there anything that you do to manage that depression, anxiety, either before you had him or afterwards now? What are some things that you've done to help manage that you find is helpful, even in a small way?
Yeah. So things like having supportive friends and some supportive family. My husband is very supportive and helps me with that. He helps kind of combat those negative thoughts that happen. So I just have to try to rewire that brain. So I have to try to tell myself I am doing what I can. Things happen, and that doesn't mean that I'm not a good mom. Also, getting out of the house too also helped and kind of refreshed. My favorite was like going to get boba tea. That was like my go-to. But yeah, I think having a good support group of any kind is the key.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think relating to other moms that either are going through the same thing or just moms in general who understand motherhood, in their own way, and being able to be seen and heard by the people that you're around is extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think motherhood is hard. It's hard for everyone in their own different way, and no story is the same. No, journey is the same. Um, but I think, your continued therapy from before you had him and now is probably, a huge tool that has helped you. Yeah, I guess, is there anything more you wanted to say on that piece, or even, your depression, anxiety before you had him?
Yeah, I think a lot of therapy is taboo. I see nothing wrong with it. Getting therapy or help in any which way is not a weakness; it's a sign of strength. And it will give you the tools to help develop them in a healthy mentally way. I didn't want Kieran seeing me in an unhealthy way. I didn't want him to pick up those unhealthy habits that I picked up from my mom and she picked up from her mom. So I would highly suggest that if you feel like you're drowning, go see somebody. It is definitely worth seeing somebody and talking to somebody about it. That way you can help your child combat those issues as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point that you were making of, the generational taboos that tend to, bleed over into our generation of like, if you go to therapy, you're crazy, or if you go to
Yeah.
therapy, like you were saying, it's a weakness, and it's totally not. And the fact that you're getting help will help Kieran when he gets older. And if he happens to have even just a little bit of anxiety about something, you have the tools to be able to help him. And that's like so valuable, something that I think our parents may not have had the tools for, just based on the the culture around therapy.
Yeah.
um, and I know there's a lot of businesses now who offer either, free therapy, or the first couple meetings are free, or just a lowered cost now in
Mhm.
therapy, which is great. I think the evolution of mental health and therapy is happening.
Yeah.
It's something that is not so prevalent, though. Like, not a lot of people know about those benefits, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Um, so is there anything else in your journey that you want to share?
I think if one parting thing would be if you question whether you're a good mom or not, usually that means you're doing the right thing, because most of the time if you're not questioning, you're questioning, so you're worried about it. So therefore, you're doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. I think questioning makes you a good mom, whether
Yeah.
you're worried, sick, or, just a little bit worried. It's like that worry shows that you care.
Yep.
Yeah. That's better than, that's important. Um, anyways, well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it's hard to be so vulnerable about things that you may have been insecure about in the past. But hopefully this gives you strength. Hopefully this story gives other moms strength. And I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. If you want to share your story with us, send us an email at motherhooditr@gmail.com, or send us a message on our Facebook page, Motherhood in the Raw RVA. We look forward to hearing more stories from you. Thanks for listening.